Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Wedding Community Podcast. So we are going to get a little technical. I want to give that a little disclaimer right there. So we will be talking about live streaming this week. Not only are we talking about live streaming and the ins and outs of live streaming a wedding, but just talking about how you can adapt your business and when times get tough. We all went through a really rough period in 2020. Some of us are still going through that right now. And though it was really hard to get through a year like 2020, the ones that make it out on the top are the ones that are able to adapt and to just be able to read what people need right now. And for us in the video industry, it was definitely live streaming. I can't tell you how many new couples I got to book because of live streaming and just how it was able to basically bring on new clients when normally we would have maybe lost all of our clients because of the pandemic. Enough of me talking, I want to hear what Matt has to say, so let's hop right in. Hello everyone, and I am joined today with my good buddy Matthew Sutherland with Matrimony Films. Matt is a wedding videographer and commercial videographer located in California. And we met, I think 2 or 3 years ago now at WPPI.
Probably 3 years ago, yeah.
Is it 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and if you're not familiar with WPPI, it's this huge conference, which sounds a little scary probably to a lot of people, like, oh, huge event. They haven't had one since COVID started. We snuck our last one in right before COVID, but huge conference for photographers and filmmakers from all over the world. People come in not just from the States, but from all over the globe, and it's an awesome experience. We get to, learn and network with each other and do crazy 80s dance parties, which is actually probably one of the highlights of last year of my memories of Matt was seeing him dance in a Marty McFly outfit. That was definitely a highlight. So yeah, it's
won the costume contest.
You did, yeah. B&H gift card, right?
That's right. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
That was great. So yeah, and Matt can probably explain his business a lot better than me, so I will let him take it away and introduce himself.
Well, thank you, Travis. Yes, it's been awesome getting to know you, and yeah, WPPI, just incredible way to. I remember, I want to say it was probably 2 or 3 years ago. We were like at one of those after parties at the Omni at Caesar's Palace, and standing on like this rooftop with like photographers and videographers from Switzerland and New York and Chicago and LA, and just going, wow, like this is kind of cool that this conference brings those kinds of artists together and share ideas and hang out together. So it's pretty great. So I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I actually was born in Chicago, so I feel like this Midwest kindred spirit with you in some ways. But we moved out to Los Angeles when I was 10 years old, and I always wanted to be an actor. And I'm like, I'm going to be a star. I'm going to go to Hollywood. And I did, and I went to school for acting, but then along the way was always interested in filmmaking and just wanted to create ways to give myself a chance to be an actor as well. So I had a camera, and me and my friends would go out on the weekends and make movies together, and we'd take turns being in front of the camera, behind the camera. So I found myself at UCLA thinking I was at the acting school at UCLA, and I started taking editing classes, filmmaking classes, screenwriting classes, and just fell in love with every aspect of filmmaking, and went into the acting world and was an actor for many, many years, and did commercials, and was actually a regular on a TV show for a little while. And then, like it ebbs and flows, and then you kind of want to start a family, and like going to these crazy auditions like 50 times a week was getting to be a lot. And I started to want to control my own destiny. So I'm like, I wonder if I could, make things a little more like stable during the downtimes. So I started this wedding video business, and 19 years later, here I am. We went from, I think I made like 1 or 2 of my wife's friends' wedding videos that first year, and then like 10, and then 12, and then 20, and then 40. And now our company has 3 teams of guys, and we make around 100 wedding videos a year. But we also do mitzvahs, so bar mitzvah, bat mitzvahs, and then quite a bit of corporate work. About 4 years ago now, I signed on as an ambassador for Panasonic. So I'm a Panasonic Lumix ambassador. I've always used Panasonic's gear, so I've been a huge fan of their gear for at least 18, 19 years. And 4 years ago, they asked if I wanted to be one of their ambassadors. And so now I get gear and I get to try it out and I get to test it and then I get to use the best stuff. So that's been awesome. Yeah, so we do wedding films, corporate films, and pretty much I do legal video and then a bunch of day in the life stuff for a couple lawyers in our town. And then I've started live streaming, and that's how you and I have really bonded, is our love and hate for live streaming and trying to figure it all out, right?
Yeah, that's been quite the experience. I know we both jumped into it mostly because of COVID and just kind of the kind of the strain it put on the wedding business and just trying to kind of adapt and learn something new. And it's been a fun ride. And I will say, I've been doing this for around 10 years, and you kind of like start hitting this point where like you get really good at what you're doing and it starts kind of feeling the same, not like a bad same. It's like your films are always just consistently like good, and you kind of know what you're doing and you have the gear you need, and some of that excitement goes away. And I have to tell you, the excitement definitely came back when I'm trying to like figure out how to connect to the internet at this place, and it's like, okay, now I can't get on for some reason, and now I can't connect to YouTube, and now like the planner's telling me we got to move because we're too close to this or that, and it's like it definitely brought a whole level of excitement that I had not experienced in a while. So it's been a little stressful, but overall I'd say it's been pretty fun to add a new service to what we do.
I totally agree. And like, yeah, just like learning and going, okay, this downtime, this negative time, and like turning it into a positive and something, another revenue stream for your business has been super exciting. It's frightening. And yes, I've been in the same boat where it's like, I got a low signal. What do I do? And camera, battery's about to go out over there and a battery over here. And you're like, oh, it's all like kind of like juggling balls. And after it's all over, you're like, wow, that was pretty cool. Like we pulled it off, Pretty fun.
Yeah, that's great. It's a reminder too that like you can kind of do with your time what you want to. I know a lot of people come, middle of March, they're in the wedding industry, they're getting calls already from brides that they're going to be rescheduling, or they don't know what they're doing, or they're canceling their wedding. And a lot of them were just like, all right, I'm just going to kick back and watch Netflix, and I guess I'll just wait till this all kind of the dust settles. And it's like next thing we know, we're still living in it. It's almost been a year. And the people that are kind of rising to the top are the ones that kind of found a way to take what they know and try to adapt that into something new. And for us being in video, kind of the common one was live streaming. But I've also seen it in other ways. I know a hairstylist, and she lost a lot of weddings because they didn't want to bring in a hairstylist. They just decided to do their own hair because they wanted to keep the foot traffic low. And so one thing she started doing in the summer when the weather was nice is she started doing basically like an outdoor salon. So she set up a little tent in her backyard and people could schedule an appointment. It was really cool just to see people trying to adapt. I have a DJ friend, he was doing like live DJ mixing on Twitch. It's just like there's so many ways that we can adapt our business, but you just have to take that initiative. It's very easy to just be like, all right, well, I'll just wait and I'll wait till we can go back to normal. But sometimes it might not ever go back to normal.
Well, and I think what we're finding now is it's probably not like going to go back to normal as we knew it, right? Like things change, things change, and business from the day, like from years and years and years, the businesses that pivot and they change and adapt are the ones that survive and thrive. I have a DJ story too. I have like two, a networking group, and we had two DJs in this networking group. And one of them did exactly what you said, which is like, oh, can't go in to do anything. Oh, well, turn on the TV or watch YouTube videos and just wait for this to blow over. And the other guy said, you know what? I don't want to sit around. And he went out on his driveway and, basically set up his DJ gear on his driveway for his block and did a block party. And then he's like, wait a second, so he literally would go on weekends to different blocks around town and just say, hey, I'm here and I'm accepting tips. And he would literally make $400, $500, $600 on a weekend running a block party, playing music and letting people play outside. It was a huge pivot for him. He actually ended up doing about 30 a month. And that was a whole lot better than sitting in your room and hoping it was going to end soon, right?
Yeah. For you, Matt, what was your timeline like when it came to getting into the live streaming? When did the light bulb go off for you, and what did that process kind of look like leading up to where you are now?
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I'm a part of this whole tight knit. Like the WPPI has opened the door for this like filmmaking community, guys who are just interested in kind of like formulating ideas together. And so on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, I'm, aware of kind of what other people are doing and trying to converse with people. And I actually have a videographer who worked for me and was my main guy for a while, who's gone to Tennessee and started his own company in Tennessee, Brandon Rice, who right? And so we talk, and then other people around the country talking. I did notice like there was some guy, across the country who started live streaming. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like several people in different markets, videographers who were starting to do live streaming, and there was very little known about it. And it did seem like this cool software called Sling Studio was like really kind of easy to do, but it was like $2,000 to like invest in that. And I'm like, ugh, is this the time to spend $2,000? Like that's kind of scary. But then my entrepreneur brain kicked in and said, hey, you're going to spend 2,000, but how much are you going to make? Like if you make 20,000, then you got to spend 2,000, like you got to invest in order to get money back. Scared. And that's what I yelled at myself. And I bit the bullet and was like, at least I'm going to try, like it might fail, it might be miserable, and then maybe I can return the equipment or resell it or something like that. So I bit the bullet and spent the $2,000 and felt immediate buyer's remorse. It's like, what did I just do? But as soon as it arrived, I started playing like with it as a new toy. And then I actually saw Travis go on YouTube with his new Sling Studio, and he's like doing a little, hey, I'm just figuring this thing out. I don't know what I'm doing, but oh, look at that. I click this button and look what that does. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's doing the same thing I'm doing. This is great. And I immediately reached out to you and said, let's figure this out together. And we did. So that's pretty much the timeline. It wasn't very long. I mean, it was, I would say, the shutdown. I actually was filming a wedding on March 15th. And I remember at 9:00 at night during like the father-daughter dance, I got an alert on my phone that said, we are in a shutdown, like effective immediately. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the last wedding I'm going to film for a long time. And I think that next week I purchased the live streaming gear, and it arrived right away. I jumped on it quickly in the sense that like I didn't know what else we were going to be able to do, and that seemed like some action I could take. And that's how I am. I feel like that's why I've been successful for this long. Is I'm just going to do stuff, throw a bunch of stuff up against the wall. And if a bunch of it fails, that's fine, but something's bound to work because I'll just make it work. And that was one of the things that I was like, this is something I can actively go for. And if nothing else, I learn a new skill. I learn how to live stream, and I can live stream my daughter singing or something like that, but, and I learned it. And then I immediately also said, I can't just sit here and just know I have to get my money back out of this gear. So I got to do one for free. And I think I just found an event that somebody would let me live stream and just not know that I was practicing on them, and that really lit a fire under me to actually figure out how to make it work. And I did, and now I've done at least 30, 40 events with the live stream gear.
Like you're saying, we kind of have a similar timeline. Like I remember that time still, like I want to say it was right in the middle of March. We went to visit my brother-in-law and his family, and it was like right when they were about to shut down Illinois. So we were kind of like hesitant, and we're like, are we even allowed to go? Because they're in Wisconsin, and it's like a 5-hour drive, and I'm like, are we gonna like not be allowed back in our state? And there's like so much uncertainty that was happening. And I even remember too, like we stopped at a rest stop, and we parked kind of close to this lady, and we're like, I don't know if we should park so close to them, like they might get upset. And then as soon as we got out of the car, the lady's like, you need to park somewhere else. And she's like freaking out on us. And like, everyone was just like so freaked out and everything. But the reason why I bring that up is I remember visiting them, and I got a call from a guy I know that owns a dance studio, and he's asking me about like live streaming and like how he should do it. And he's like trying to pick my brain about it. And I'm kind of like, dude, I don't even know myself. Like I'm in video production, but I don't really have the answers for you. So then I started looking into it so I could kind of give him some ideas. And then like the light bulb went off, and I'm like, wait a second, I could use this for my own business. And surely enough, I ordered it, and I'm glad I did, because I think like the next week it was like you couldn't even find it anywhere. You couldn't find video capture cards, you couldn't find the Sling Studio, you couldn't find anything that had to do with live streaming or video chat. And so I was like, well, if anything, I can always maybe resell this or something if I don't end up using it. And then the next week, a bride reaches out to me, and she's like, hey, we're canceling our wedding. And so I didn't want to take that as a answer to anything. So I asked them what their plan is. I didn't want to just leave it at that, because they were ready to just kind of like, hey, keep the retainer, we're going to cancel our contract. And I'm like, hold on a second, like you can't just be canceling your wedding, like you're going to be doing something. And so I asked them about, yeah, and so I asked them about like, well, and they're like, well, you know what, we are considering doing a small 10-person get together. We're going to do a ceremony at our church. And I was like, hey, like what if I live streamed it for you? And so that was kind of my first go around to be able to try out the Sling Studio, and I was already going to be filming the wedding anyhow. So then I decided to go ahead and stream it, and just did a basic kind of one camera setup with the Sling Studio, and just tried it out. And I was like, this works really well. And so my goal became, okay, I want to at least like be able to pay back how much this thing costs, and then end up turning basically into its own service. Like now I feel like we were a photography and videography studio. Now I feel like we're almost like a photography, videography, and live streaming service. People are coming to us just for live streaming sometimes, which is really cool. And like you were saying, I don't think it's going anywhere. Like I think it's something that's going to last. Like even when conferences resumes and expos resume, there's going to be a lot of people that just don't want to go, and for the conference to be able to offer them an option of still live streaming it to the people that can't be there, I think that's like a great opportunity for them. And same with weddings, there's still going to be people that don't want to travel out of country. And so to be able to share with them the experience day and date from their house, it's really cool. There's nothing quite like it.
I totally agree, and you're on similar like wedding video industry chats that I'm on, and it is interesting to see people's different perspectives on. There's definitely a faction of people who are like, that's not that's not like wedding filmmaking, or that's not going to last. And I think you and I are kind of only, maybe there's two other voices that are like, I don't know, I think it's here to stay. And yeah, I mean, we're not creating an incredible like moving emotional wedding film like we can do when we're just filming and then editing post, but we're creating a high quality live event from multiple camera angles. It's really making hundreds of people feel like they're there at your wedding, and it's really valuable. I don't know why it would go anywhere. And then I mentioned to you as well that, yeah, I've gotten into this niche of mitzvahs. I actually have a wedding planner who's referred me a bunch of times, and she was like, hey, I've got this mitzvah and they want to live stream. I saw on Instagram that you're live streaming, and I'm like, yes. And I did one at this temple, and she, was the planner, and I live streamed the whole thing, and the people from the temple just flipped out. Well, the temple had made a huge commitment with like tents and audio gear to do, because they didn't want everyone to cancel their mitzvah and obviously lose the revenue from having a bunch of people come and do their service at that temple. So they're like, this is a way we can help everyone keep their service here at the temple, but they do it outdoor in their parking lot under all these tents. And now I've done 15 at least at that same temple, and kind of been a little niche for us to live stream mitzvahs, because yes, brides and grooms maybe could postpone and like say, well, I've got this vision of this 200 person wedding and I don't want to let that go. We'll just wait till we can do that. A lot of families with mitzvahs, like that child only turns 13 once, and we're going to do it however we have to do it and move on.
Like you're saying, a wedding, it's like, okay, we can just get married next year. We'll do like the small ceremony and then do the big party. But when it comes to a birthday, it's like you can only delay that so long before you're going to be celebrating their 18th birthday because you kept putting it off for so long.
Well, and I have a lot of families that are like, they've got one that's 2 years younger. So they're like, we're not going to move this one to next year, because then what about the next one? So they've, especially with the opportunity to live stream it, and they see the samples that we have, and they're like, wow, like, yeah, this can be great. And we're starting to an element of like allowing a Zoom to kind of be brought into it so that more people can kind of feel like they're there. That's another can of worms, uh but it's been pretty incredible, like giving people that kind of a product.
What I would love to talk about, Matt, is just kind of the gear that goes into it. Now, I will give a disclaimer, this might get a little nerdy, and so if you're not totally into videography, you might get lost, but I just ask that you stick with us because I think there'll be some good bits of knowledge that we'll still get out of this. But I would love to just kind of have you explain, what is going into your process for live streaming and kind of what makes it different compared to, the bride just having her uncle use his cell phone on Facebook Live. Like, why would she hire you as opposed to just having him do it for free?
Right. And we face that all the time, even with just video, in that, like, well, why can't my uncle just use his camera phone and film the reception? And it's the same answer I use all the time, which is the truth, which is like, you want your relatives to enjoy the wedding. You want them to be a part of the event, so that they're getting to be, interactive with you and not just have a job. And the other thing is, they're not a professional, so they don't know what parts you maybe want recorded and what maybe you don't need. They basically, might put it down and stop doing it, and you got battery power issues, you have connectivity issues, lighting issues, composition. I just did a wedding on Sunday, and I was filming the wedding, and they had a family friend do the live stream, and I'm like, oh no. And inevitably, yeah, she ran into a ton of problems, and it was actually, the girl in charge of the live stream was a friend of our family who I'd just filmed her wedding a few months ago. So she knows I do live streaming, and there I am trying to film the wedding, and she's like, "Hey, can you help me? Hey." Like, no, I'm working. And she was on Facebook Live, and she, turned it sideways, but she had started recording with it up and down vertical, and then she turned it sideways because the bracket for her whatever thing she had was sideways, and everybody on Facebook Live is screaming at her, it gets sideways, I can't see. So yeah, she ran into a bunch of problems, and users were frustrated. And I think there was 80 people on the live stream that were, having to crane their neck in order to watch the wedding. So we do it a lot, and we're good at it. So that's the big reason you should hire a professional. Our gear is not just a phone in someone's pocket. Our gear is, you're talking about $2, $3, $4,000 worth of gear at least that we're, invested in, and we've worked on it, and we've worked out the kinks and stressed out over all the the bumps in the road. But as far as gear, it starts with the Sling Studio box. That's what we use. I actually have an A10 Mini Pro that I can do if we have like some heftier job. But that's quite a bit more expensive and more complicated because you have to go through laptop software and all that. So I won't get nerdy there. But the Sling Studio is just a fantastic option because you can plug in, it comes with a cam link, which hooks up HDMI to your camera. And you can have I think you can have up to 4 inputs, right, into the Sling Studio. So, and I think 3 of them can be cameras, or can all 4 be cameras, Travis? Do you know?
4 cameras, and then I think with cell phones, it's even more than that too.
Oh, okay. Well, what I will do is I'll do 2 cameras and a cell phone. And I do that because I've got 2 cam link boxes. And so my strategy is I use all Panasonic 4K cameras, but you can only broadcast HD, like 1080 resolution. So I have to downres my cameras to 1080. But then with those 2 cam link boxes, I want one of them live and I want one of them as a backup case, because I typically will go live at least a half hour, if not 45 minutes before this event starts, just so we've got all the kinks worked out. And 2 out of the many events we've done so far have, like, I've given that 45-minute window, and I've gone up to like literally 4 or 5 minutes before we actually worked out all the bugs, and now we were live. So it's been a really good thing to have that little buffer zone, and we can go live right away. And we usually show a still image of the couple or of whoever, I've done memorials where it's a picture of that person, and the mitzvahs, it's a picture of the mitzvah person. And then we can just switch it to one of the live cameras as soon as we want to start the event. So I use a cam link, and then I have a backup cam link in case the battery goes out on that first cam link, or if there's any issue with that cam link box, I have a backup. I can just switch right away. And then I hardwire a camera into HDMI into this, the Sling Studio hub. So I've got 1 camera hardwired, 1 camera on a Wi-Fi cam link, and then I use a cell phone. I've got a Pro Max 12 cell phone that I use, so it's got a really nice camera in there as well. And that one, they link up different ways. So what I've found is that if there's ever a problem with some sort of input, I mean, Sling Studio is really nice, but it's not flawless. It has its own like quirks, and sometimes the HDMI port doesn't work and only the cam link is working. But every single time the cell phone works. So I always have a cell phone just because it literally works every time, no questions asked. So I'm like, I'm at least going to have one that's going to be flawless. So those are my 3 video inputs. And then typically, sometimes I'll actually use a laptop if there's like a slideshow or something to show as an HDMI input as well. And then it becomes an audio situation, right? So I usually, with the audio, I have a Zoom H6, which is a 4-track recorder. It's like this it's a really affordable little sound mixer, basically. And then that also will record all the audio from the event at the same time. So I love that I'm recording the event from each camera. The Sling Studio hub records the event, and then the audio is being captured. So it's like nice, kind of like triple, quadruple back myself up kind of stuff going on. And what I'll usually do is I'll patch into a sound system or the back of a speaker that I know all the audio is going to flow through. And then I'll take an XLR cable. I've got like a 500-foot XLR cable that, runs to wherever I'm stationed, and it plugs into my Zoom H6. And then I take that and I go into the audio input in the back of a Sling Studio, and I get flawless audio. And I actually only use that feed. What we've learned the hard way with the Sling Studio is that when you have all the audio live, you click to a different camera, it switches the audio track to whatever camera you're on. So you have to turn all those things off and just go, my audio input is my only audio source. And I'm monitoring that as I'm switching. So I have myself there, or, one of my guys to run the live stream. And then I have a camera guy usually runs one of the cameras. So we usually do it with two people, one running the camera, and he's running the back camera, and he can, run up to one of the other two cameras if it needs to be changed. But usually I get an angle on the crowd that's wide, and I get an angle on whatever's happening up at the front tight. And then the guy in the back can make adjustments to like kind of follow action, pull back and zoom out, to give a nice wide shot from the back. And it gives us really three nice shots to cut to. It's not super intricate, but it gives us a really nice finished product. And I've always got a good shot or two to cut to anytime.
Yeah, I think the main appeal I had with the Sling Studio was the multicam aspect of it, because that's really what kind of sets it apart from, just Uncle Bob using a cell phone, because he's only going to be able to be in one place. And if he does want to get a different angle, you're going to see all of that movement on the stream. So if he's walking from the left to the right, he can't cut to a different camera. So you see all of the imperfections of that. Whereas with the stream and doing the multi-cameras, it's almost like, if you were watching like the Grammys or a sporting event, maybe not quite as intense as what they do, but that same concept of like, okay, here's the wide and everyone's clapping and we're introducing in the person, and then here's the tight while they're speaking, and then here's like, a reaction shot from the crowd. Like, we can do that with the Sling Studio setup, which is really cool. The other thing for me too was just the ability to still kind of basically be able to work how we normally work, and we're just adding the streaming stuff to our normal setup. What I wanted to avoid was having to maybe bring in a whole nother team for just a streaming with their own cameras, their own streaming stuff, and then we still had to do our normal filming. But instead with this Sling, it's really just kind of an accessory we add to what we're already doing. Now we do have to keep in mind that we are live, so like, I can't be, I usually get pretty crazy, like especially with a monopod, and I'm like, boom, getting this reaction shot of mom, now I'm over here getting the groom, now I'm getting the bride, now I'm, getting this cool shot through the candle or whatever I'm doing. I can't do that quite as much if the camera is live. I have to make sure I'm not live, but as long as I'm not live, I can still do all of that, and it's still also streaming, and the quality is just great, especially if you're using a DSLR or mirrorless or like a cinema camera. It's going to look a lot better than a camcorder. Granted, a camcorder, HD quality and stuff, but there's just something kind of nice about being able to have that kind of shallow depth of field where, like the bride's in focus and, the background is out of focus, and you're really like pulling the viewer in to the stream, as opposed to just like, here's this wide shot of the whole church and you can see everything. You're basically directing them on what they should be looking at. And so, obviously the video and the audio is a super important part of it, but I would say just as important is the internet and making sure you're actually online, because if you don't get online, then there's no live stream. So Matt, I would just love to hear kind of what you're doing to solve the issue of internet.
Yes, it's always an issue. It's funny, I have to address the fact that I can just get this visual in my head of Emily just pulling her hair out as you're running around getting all shots through candles and stuff, and she's like, I just need something to cut to. I'm sure that drives her crazy.
I can relate, because I do that to myself when I'm editing the film. So I'm like, what was I doing? Like, why did I think I needed all these shots?
Yeah, but then you get the finished product and you're like,
Yeah.
wow,
Well, maybe it was worth it.
It's pretty good.
He is.
Okay, so internet issues. Where we start is Sling Studio. One of the awesome things about it is it basically needs like 5 megabits per second in order to work, right? Which is not very big. Like most, I mean, most people at their house, now we're getting 100 megabits per second data speeds and stuff like that. So, hopefully like 20 to 30 megabits per second upload speeds. But for whatever reason, I usually find people's upload speeds are like 10 megabits per second, which still is manageable. But we want to always hardwire in the Ethernet cable. So there's an Ethernet adapter that the Sling Studio you can get with it that you can hardwire in an Ethernet cable to someone's router. And wherever you're at, that's something we ask every client is, do you have a router and is it within 200 feet of where the ceremony is going to be or the event's going to be? Because we have a 200-foot Ethernet cable that we are able to run hardwire Ethernet, then we know we're not going to like drop a Wi-Fi signal, which is a big no-no when you're trying to live stream. We have definitely done events where they do not have that. And so I've just gone out to the location and checked their internet speed and made sure it's at least 10 megabits per second, hopefully more. And then I always have my iPhone Pro Max 12 that gets that I can do a personal hotspot from as well. That usually gets around that 10 megabits per second upload speed. So it ends up running really pretty smooth whatever I'm faced with. But I'll always go to the site just to check, do I have cell service? Am I going to be able to activate my hotspot? Do I have a Wi-Fi signal? Because I know something that's very valuable to know. I just learned from you today, Travis, as we were talking earlier, is that I may go to that spot and I may get a 10 megabits per second upload speed and think I'm good. But then as soon as 100 people or 25 people load in for that event and they all start to go on that Wi-Fi, like for some reason it's inevitable that signal is going to start dropping, and you're going to get, if you get at 6 megabit per second, you're in danger zone. So you don't want to drop your Wi-Fi feed during your live stream, because
You
nobody
do
wants to give
not.
money back,
Yeah,
right? They don't wanna
you
give
can't
their money
redo
back.
that one. They can't redo the wedding and you can't redo the live stream. So the internet is an important thing. It all kind of comes back to, there is a lot of preparation, I think, that goes into live streaming. It's definitely one of the services where you have to do a lot of planning beforehand to be able to execute it. Like, you can't just kind of roll into the venue the day of and just assume everything's going to work, because you don't know what you're getting into. And one issue I've ran into because of COVID is a lot of the churches, like in downtown Chicago, they're extremely strict, like beyond strict. And so a lot of times you can't go in, before the wedding. So you have to call and you have to try to kind of figure out everything over the phone. And it can be hard because you'll talk to their tech guy on the phone, and then when you arrive, he's not there because they're trying to, have as few of people as possible. So even though you discuss everything with the tech guy, like, you might still be on your own when you get there. And so it's very tricky, but definitely the more planning you can do beforehand, the easier it's going to be and the better executed it's going to be, for sure.
Yeah, and I've dealt with that same thing too, as far as you just have to, being in this industry, you just kind of have to expect that there's going to be things that go wrong or they're going to be different, and be ready to adapt and ready to troubleshoot. But yeah, I've met with that same tech guy, or had that phone conversation with the same tech guy, and there's a different tech guy there that day, and he's like, "Oh, you talked to Brad? Brad doesn't know what he's talking about." Like,
Yeah,
okay, guess we're switching it all up.
you gotta
But
love
no,
it.
it's important. But also, I would say there are definitely more higher end ways to gather internet. There are like multiple hotspot switchers that you can purchase, but I think at the price point that you and I are kind of like talking about for the clients that we service, like what we're supplying for the price point is a very good product for the price.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're doing a corporate job for Google and it's got to go out broadcast, or you're doing the Grammys, or you're doing whatever, they're going to have a quite a bit more higher end, but their production's going to be 40, 50, $60,000. We're talking about a couple who's getting married in their backyard that might have 20 people. Their price point is not quite that high, right?
Yeah, and so Matt, how have you been structuring your packages? I'm sure it's been kind of a learning curve through the year, but where have you kind of landed now, and how are you advertising your packages to the couples?
Yeah, we're doing a price for a one camera live stream. We're trying to kind of give people a range because we're still in the point where we know how important this is and what a good product it is, but good it is until after it's over, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe like we almost didn't do that," or whatever. So we have to kind of like educate our clients and educate the industry on what is possible. So we've given like three price points for us. Like one is a one camera live stream where it's just literally I either hook up my cam link, which is like a little media card, and I hook my nice camera into a media card and just broadcast, whether that's on Zoom or Facebook or YouTube. But then the Sling Studio option is like, I usually say it's a 3 camera shoot because mentally it's pretty easy for people to understand. There's going to be a camera on each side. So we get like over the bride's shoulder to the groom and over the groom's shoulder to the bride. And then there's a camera in the back that's going to give us the whole scene. Or it's a camera that's going to be locked in up front, and then a camera that's going to give us the angle of the whole crowd, and then a camera in the back. So 3 camera setup usually works out really well. And so for our one camera, we're kind of doing anywhere in the range of like $400 to $700, somewhere in there. Depending on where you are in the country, probably Los Angeles, I typically get $650 for that package. And then for a multi-camera Sling Studio, now you've got pressure because we usually have to bring a second person for that. There's going to be one of us running the live stream and one of us running the cameras and making sure sound is all working and all that. And it's about 1,000, 1,500, somewhere in there for that kind of a package. And I'd give them the option of like 3 cameras and, like some sort of HDMI feed, whether that's, like pictures or whatever. And then we actually have now something I just worked out this weekend, which is a Zoom element integrated into their live stream. So they can kind of like feel like everyone that couldn't be there is there. And we bring a TV monitor where that whole Zoom feed is, like the wall of people is up there at their wedding, and they feel like those people are there. They can even go up afterwards and talk to the people and get some well wishes back and forth. And that's like a $2,000 package. So that's been really cool. I have only done that once, so I'm looking forward to kind of working out the kinks on that and getting better at that.
Let's say that I'm very interested in everything you've talked about so far. Would you say it's too late to jump into this, or do you think it's still beneficial to hop in?
Personally, I don't think it's too late at all. Live streaming to me seems like it is definitely here to stay. Like it is. There's always somebody who's not going to be able to be at the wedding, whether that's COVID version of like I can't travel or we're restricted from traveling, or it's even at my wedding 23 years ago, my aunt from New York couldn't be there at the wedding. So there's always going to be somebody who wishes they could have been there, and if you can supply a live stream feed, you're going to get eyeballs on it. So I think it's not only valuable for the fact that this has changed the way we think about live streaming and being online live. A lot of people understand what a Zoom call is, and well, pretty much everybody does now, right? So I think it's just opened people's minds to what's possible. And I don't think it's going anywhere. Even when things, go more in person, we're still going to have a live element that's going to be valuable for people. And then it's just opened the door too for so many different, memorials, mitzvahs, and like there's so many ways you can implement live streaming into something that can kind of turn revenue for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Matt, for sharing all of your knowledge on live streaming. It was fun just to go back and forth with everything we both have learned. Do you have any other kind of tips or tricks you want to share when it comes to live streaming?
That is a good question. I mean, I'm still learning too, so I'm, all relatively new at this. I certainly don't feel like I've got it all completely figured out yet. Um, as far as tips and tricks, I mean, the truth is I'll kind of equate it to one of the things that fell in love with video, and wedding video specifically, is that whenever we do a same day edit for brides and grooms, it's amazing how people, when something is live or something happens immediately, like we have high standards. We want things to look perfect. We want, like we beat ourselves up all the time about, oh man, it's not like as, the lighting was off, or, oh, that shot didn't color match that shot or whatever. But when a bride sees her and her friends and her family, and there's music swelling, and then they kiss on video, they see moving images of themselves put to music, they love it. They melt. They don't see all those imperfections that we see. And the same goes to live streaming. Like when you can actually put moving video and great audio online right now in real time for other people, or like they're so thankful. It's a gift you're giving to everybody who didn't have this a year ago.
Yeah, I always joke about it too when I talk to the bride and groom if they're inquiring about live streaming is your guests watching it at home, on the couch in their pajamas or whatever, they're probably going to hear and see things better than you even are. And you're there in person, especially the audio. I mean, like some of these, like, big Catholic churches, like it's extremely echoey as you're inside there. Like I had one where the priest not only had the mask, but he also had the face shield, and it's really echoey. So it's like you're in there, you have no idea what this guy is even saying. But I have him mic'd up with a little lav mic, so everyone at home, they can hear him perfectly fine, So it's kind of funny. It's almost the better experience to watch it from home than it is to
You're
be
right.
there. So
You're right. It's so true. And it's weird how like great audio just it becomes something that people don't notice how incredible it is until like my friend, the ex-bride, who just live streamed sideways on Facebook, and there was two waterfalls running, and she's getting ambient sound, waterfall, and then people are like, I can't hear it, I can't hear it, I gotta cram it. Oh, people, the user experience was so miserable. I'm sure tons of people turned it off.
yeah.
Versus like our finished product is mics on the groom, mic on the officiant, and perfect sound, and people at home just assume that this is the way it should be, right? They don't even notice how great it is.
Yeah, until their other friend gets married and they don't use you, and they end up with the sideways viewing situation, and they're like, man, they should have hired that other guy last time. So
There you go.
so
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you, Matt, for all of your knowledge. Where can people find you, and are you currently doing anything cool that people should go check out?
I'm doing some really cool stuff on, like I'm actually going to speak at B&H's Depth of Field conference on March 8th. That's going to be pretty cool. So obviously I'm a Panasonic Lumix ambassador, but I'm also an ambassador for Light and Motion, which is a light company that they, give me these like cool key lights and all the lighting here in my live stream. So great lighting company. And I'll also, I've got if anybody wants to contact me at Matrimony Films on Instagram, I can give them coupon codes for Panasonic or Light and Motion. And I'll come see the Depth of Field conference for B&H online on March 8th.
Yeah, and I'll put that in the description so people can find it easily too. So, all right, cool. Well, you might want to get your DM box ready because you're probably going to be getting all sorts of follow-ups on live streaming and people wanting to get into live streaming after hearing all the good things about it. So.
Please do. The more people we have involved, the more we can learn from each other, you know? So yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a huge thing in itself is the connecting together. You know, we could have easily stayed isolated, just kind of kept figuring it out on our own and screwing up on our own, but instead we kind of came together when we got started and just started sharing notes, and I think it definitely helped accelerate our learning process.
Well, we won't get into this specifically, but the integrated in Sling Studios YouTube Live used to be just seamlessly integrated, and then for some reason, I think there was like a fallout or something, and all of a sudden the YouTube link stopped working. They had to do a secret kind of like backdoor way to actually get your live stream live, and I think you and I both like banged our head against the wall for a little while, going, "Hey, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong?" And then we talk on the phone and it's like, "Are you getting this problem?" "Yes, I'm totally getting that problem." And then we kind of figured it out together. And now I know how to make that work. Thank you, Travis, for that help.
Yeah, and I don't talk about that anymore because that was a very devastating time period trying to figure that out. So
We got through it together.
we
That's the
did,
key.
we did. All right, well, Matt, thank you again. I appreciate your time, and until next time, we will see you around.